All right, everybody, welcome in. What's going on, Chiefs Kingdom? Welcome back. I'm Grindberg. I'm here on the Undroppables Network bringing you episode number 5 of the Chiefs Uncovered. Today, we have a special treat for you. We have a special guest that will help us break down all the breaking news that happened this week for Chiefs. And then we will dig into 5 situational deep dives in the deep dive segment of the show. So, like I said last show, I want to bring some of you on, the viewers, the diehard members of Chiefs Kingdom, to come on the show and talk Chiefs ball. So if you are a passionate Chiefs fan and want a chance to talk about your favorite team with me on this platform, shoot me a DM on Twitter at FFCanuck99. And without further ado, let's get this special Chiefs Uncovered show going. I'm Grindberg, and this is the Chiefs Uncovered on the Undroppables Network. All right, the fantasy football season never stops. Did you know you can already draft for the 2024 season on Underdog Fantasy, the easiest play to fantasy football? The big board is a pre-NFL draft football contest with all the incoming rookies in the player pool. Draft your team in 20 rounds, and that's it. Best ball format, you get the optimal score to fill your starting lineup. A great way to get your dynasty startup draft fix without any league management. Only $10 to enter and over $2 million in prizes up for grabs. Be sure to sign up for Underdog with promo code UNDROPPABLE and you'll get your first match deposit up to $100. And now back to the show. So today we have a special guest. Daniel Harms is here. So let's introduce Daniel in. So, Daniel Harms is a great football mind. He is here from RGR Football, NFL33.com, and the Footballguys. He's great at breaking down film, and we have a special treat for you today. So, Daniel, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate you having me on the show so we can talk about the Chiefs, everyone's favorite, favorite team that's going to be watching this for the most part. And, I loved football for a long time, and I never really understood what I wanted to do with that passion and that love, because it wasn't playing the game. I can tell you that much. As much as I would love to play, it didn't go as well as I would have hoped it did. So I joined the military not long after, actually right after I left high school. And then from there, I got out, got some medical things that I had to deal with that they didn't want me in the Air Force anymore for. And then I started writing, I found Twitter, and from there it just kind of exploded. And honestly, right now, I'm a stay-at-home dad, and I write, produce content, my own videos on RGR Football for Footballguys. I have my own podcast now at Cover One with John Helpkamp, where we cover the draft. So there's a lot going on and a lot of football that I get to talk. So I'm very, very grateful for the opportunity to be, and not just doing it, but being here and helping to spread as much knowledge as possible.
Yeah, I've been following you for a while now, and especially because I'm a diehard Chiefs fan myself, and some of the stuff that you come up with and you break down, it's really in depth. And if you don't follow Daniel, you really should, because some of this stuff is really, really, really good. So I've been following you, like I said, for a while, and we have some things in common other than just football and our beloved Kansas City Chiefs. We also share a passion for cooking, and I've seen some of the dishes you've created. Amateur cooks don't put out food like that. So where does that passion come from?
I would have to say that my mother is one of the reasons I love cooking. Obviously in a person household growing up, you don't always have everything that you need to be able to. So my mom always was creating things and just gave me a passion for food that not a lot of and my siblings don't have. Like they cook and they can, but like for whatever reason, it does come a little more natural to me to just kind of, even if there's a recipe, I'll just, divert a little bit from it, because most of the food that I do put out is me finding something that I want to make, using a recipe, and then just kind of manipulating it a little bit. I will say that my plating is not very good. My wife tells me all the time that she's the one that needs to be plating the food and not me, but I love to cook. And right now, actually, as we speak, I have some ribs on the smoker that I'm going to be doing for dinner. So I love it so much, and it's something that as I've gotten older, that passion continues to grow, and I always try and challenge myself with new things, and baking is a huge thing that I like to do as well. So there's just so many different things about this football aspect that I'm allowed to like lose myself a little bit in cooking. If I need a break, I can just kind of do that, and it takes my mind off of it. So it's always been nice to just kind of go that way.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Yeah, I don't know. I've been doing that for a long time. That's my profession I'm a teacher, but I teach culinary arts. So cooking has been part of my life. And when you talk about ribs on the smoker, that's kind of what my summers look like, because I get summers off, and that's kind of what I do all summer is I create fantasy football content and I cook a storm up. So that's awesome. Well,
Love it.
thanks for sharing, man. That's awesome stuff. Okay, so we're gonna get into the breaking news. So it was a very, very busy week in the NFL. I'm not sure if I remember free agency tampering period that went off like that in my day. I'm 42 years old and I don't remember it being ever like that before. So maybe some of the older guys out there have better memories of days where free agency has been that crazy. But man, last year we were waiting for those running backs to finally sign, and then before the tampering period went off, it was like bang, 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 bang.
Yeah.
So number one was Chris Jones. The biggest news in Chiefs Kingdom was announced with the legal tampering period open. That was he signed the old pro tackle, historic 5-year deal worth $95 million in guaranteed money. Jones becoming the highest paid defensive player in NFL history with this contract. We are going to dig deeper into this situation in our deep dive portion of the show, but what was your first reaction to this news? Were you expecting the Chiefs to be able to pull this one off, especially with how the last offseason went?
Yeah, there was more optimism this time around. We
Yeah.
heard last year before they even started to do the negotiations. We didn't really seem a lot of personally, it didn't seem like there was going to be a lot that got done. It did feel like it was going to drag on for a while, particularly because there was no urgency to get a deal done. And when you don't have the urgency, like free agency, it does create a little bit of complacency. And we know at least a little bit that the agents did not necessarily cooperate with the organization as well as maybe this time around. Jones lost a little bit of money, and then they go back to back, and Chris is like, you guys, I think I want to stay in Kansas City for a little while so we can cement this legacy here. And when you do that, when you have the money to be able to, with the cap going up every year, and honestly, finally some willingness on both sides to get this deal done, it was a great job. I know that there's some
Yeah.
hesitation for the $95 million, and there is the quote unquote discrepancy with the contract. In March of 2025 is when that 95 does come into full guaranteed. So hypothetically, if Chris Jones were to just fall off the face of the earth and not be a good player anymore, they could say, okay, well, we're going to cut you before this becomes immediately guaranteed, which they're not going to do. So all things considered, I think that this is a good deal for both sides. I know it's a lot of money, but Chris Jones is a rare player, so I'm all here for it.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, the Chiefs, the way they work their contracts is just a magical thing. The way that they restructure their deals, the way they have their signing bonuses set up, and the culture they build. People want to
Mhm.
be here, and they don't want to bring in cancers in the building either. They don't want to have to give out more money than they need to, because they have people that are buying into their systems and are taking less money to build that culture. And I love it. I love what's happening here. Now, Mahomes, his contract got restructured again. So the Chiefs announced that on, I think it was yesterday. In the process, they are set to gain $21.6 million in cap release. In the past, Brett Veach and his team have been very good at sharpening their pencils and are known to be creative in getting the number under the cap. And this year has been no different. The Chiefs are also have a couple of contracts that they could also be restructured if they needed to, like Jaron Taylor's and Joe Tooney's if they really needed to as well. So after the Chris Jones signing and the tagging of L'Jarius Sneed, we all saw this move coming. It was just a matter of how much they were restructuring Mahomes' contract by. The $21 million gives the Chiefs plenty of wiggle room now, especially when you consider looking ahead of the possibility that they may need to pay the $19 million to L'Jarius Sneed or sign him to a multi-year deal if they can't get a deal done in a trade. What are your thoughts on this, Daniel? With the restructuring, were you expecting the Chiefs to have made a move by now, or do you think a move will be made in the next little while, or do you think they did this to keep Sneed in the building?
So this was for me. This was always common, like you said. Like we all expected the restructure of Mahomes' contract to give them that cap space they needed. And if there was a trade that got done earlier before that for L'Jarius Sneed, it would have just been more cap space given to the Chiefs. And maybe they don't restructure Mahomes' contract. I think that they still would have in the end, just because it still gives them wiggle room. You have to sign some more free agents. You have to sign your draft class as well. So all those things considered, it makes sense. I'm less of the opinion that they did it so they wouldn't have to trade Sneed immediately. What it does is it allows them to just kind of keep L'Jarius around for a little while and say, well, if you guys really want L'Jarius, now we have the cap space to keep him. So if you want him, you're going to have to give us something that we want, something a little bit more. So we heard that there were third round picks being discussed specifically from the Titans, who, funny enough, don't have a third round draft pick. So there was it felt like there was some agent speak out there and some other team speak trying to lower the price of L'Jarius Sneed. I wouldn't be looking for anything lower than a second round pick, honestly, to be completely honest with you. A 27-year-old cornerback who, in most opinions, was an all pro, even though he didn't get labeled as an the penalties probably cut him down. And you guys, if you follow me or have listened to anything that I talk about, I do not care so much about the penalties. If you are going to play at that level, I'm going to give you a lot of leeway with holding and grabbing and stuff like that. I really don't care very much. So this move, again, just allows them to continue to bring in some guys that they're going to want back from the team that just won back-to-back Super Bowls, and then help to solidify the depth before they maybe make a splash. I say splash with quotations because it's not going to be what everyone assumes it's going to be. It's going to be just rounds out the team. They're not looking to bring in a lot of big name players for big name money right now. They don't feel they need to do that. So all of it makes sense, and I expect Sneed to. I mean, we've heard that he'll play on the tag. So we'll see. I do expect him to get traded. That's not something that is still that I feel worse about now. But there is always that caveat that, well, they have the space. Why not just keep him?
Yeah, exactly. And I think it was a leverage move too. It brings teams now that they have to pay up now. They're the Balls, like, we're not in a situation where we need to get rid of them now to create that cap space. They restructured Mahomes' contract. The ball's in our court now, and if they want to pay up Sneed, that's okay. And now we have the cap room to make it work, even if we do keep them. So yeah, I love that angle there. So Willie Gay signed with the Saints on a 1-year deal worth $5 million. He started 15 regular season games for the Chiefs this season. He is only 26. He was selected by the Chiefs in the second round in the 2020 draft out of Mississippi State. This was not a surprise, considering Gay was only making $1.2 million in 2023 and was due for a nice raise. So the Chiefs simply could not make room if they wanted to keep Jones, Sneed, and get some help at wide receiver. We're going to deep dive again into this part with the Drue Tranquill signing as well, but Gay on the cheap here. He got a deal, especially a 1-year deal. I know that he has baggage, but $5 million seems pretty low to me. What was your first reaction? Were you surprised as me, or you think they were the market was where it is for Willie Gay?
For me, it felt like the Chiefs are pretty comfortable with an in-house solution in Cam Jones. That's how it feels to me. And when you compare a UDFA linebacker who's going to be at least what I expect Willie Gay to have provided to the team on the field, you measure $5 million versus, kind of peanuts. And their team's like, okay, well, if we view this player as someone that can not only grow within the system, but also give us a lot of the same production in the in defending the pass, being a guy that runs sideline to sideline with that speed that he showed in week 18 against the Chargers, then we can go ahead and say, well, Willie, thank you very much for your work. And you won a couple of Super Bowls. Try now and go get paid. And obviously with a 1-year, $5 million contract, the NFL did not feel worth giving him a multi-year contract. So this kind of does feel like a prove-it year again because of the baggage and things you said. But he's an excellent player on the field. It just depends on how you're going to use him. If you're going to use him as like a thumper linebacker, you're not really doing yourself any favors, even though he can come downhill and deliver some blows. He is a really good blitzing. He's a good coverage linebacker, sideline to sideline, really, really fast guy who's beginning now to understand how offenses work. We really saw it click this past year where he was mentally in the right spot a lot of times too. So it just unfortunate for Willie that the market wasn't what it was for him, but with his past and some of the things that he's dealt with even in Kansas City, with off the field concerns, it makes a little bit of sense that teams are just going to kind of maybe give him a 1-year flyer and he's going to have to make his living that way.
Yeah, agreed. So Drue Tranquill has reached an agreement on a 3-year deal with $19 million, with $13 million in guaranteed money. A huge payday for Tranquill, who brought in as a fill-in player at the end, up playing a lot, more than expected. With the injuries to Nick Bolton and Willie Gay throughout the season, Tranquill came to the Chiefs last season as a free agent on a 1-year deal after spending his first 4 seasons with the Chargers. He started 8 of 16, often filling in for injured starter Nick Bolton, and finished with 4.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles. Tranquill was a must-sign, in my opinion, with Willie Gay inevitably looking elsewhere in free agency. I really like this move for the Chiefs. Smart. We are going to deep dive more into this situation again, like I said, but these are the types of players the Chiefs, like. Tranquill fits right in. I'm excited about him recruiting other players too. What are your thoughts on the Tranquill deal at the start here?
Yeah, he's like a true Midwest guy. He fits right in Kansas City. He loves the town. He loves the team. And that's the kind of players you want to surround your team with. The ones that come in elsewhere and they don't really know what it's like to win. And he was with the Chargers before he was in Kansas City. And we've seen, honestly, them win the offseason every single year. And then it gets into the regular season. And I mean, by no fault of their own, for the most part, injuries derail their entire plans nearly every year. When you have turnover from the head coach and a guy who maybe a lot of people bought in on the first year with Brandon Staley, but by the second year, maybe the third year, people were like, yeah, we don't want this guy anymore. The turnover culture is never easy for players, and Drue coming to Kansas City with an established culture and established infrastructure from owner all the way down to the equipment managers, like that's a whole different feel for everybody. So he loves it here. I don't expect him to want to leave anywhere, even after this deal is over. I would expect him to maybe try and stick around, but that's not always, always up to him. This is a fantastic move because he can play all 3 linebacker positions for the Chiefs. He did it multiple times this year when it needed to. He's the smartest, and maybe he's not the smartest in this system. I think Nick Bolton would have something to say about that, but he's an incredibly intelligent player that can give you so many different things out of so many different looks and give a guy like Leo Chenal, who played fantastic football this year, more opportunities, and Cam Jones, who's going to be a young player playing. They have so many different pieces that can move around. So it's a really smart move, like you said, and a great addition to this team and this defense.
I love that move too. So Irv Smith signs a 1-year deal with the Chiefs after a 1-year stint in Cincinnati. Smith played 12 games with the Bengals in 2023, earning just 26 targets. That only turned into 18 receptions for 115 yards and 1 touchdown. He was brought in to become their number 1 tight end. That never panned out, as he couldn't surpass Drue Sample on the depth chart, and then was ultimately himself passed by Tanner Hudson in week 14, becoming the 3rd option in the Bengals tight end room. Irv Smith Jr. is looking to get his career back on track with the defending back-to-back Super Bowl champions. In my opinion, though, he will just be a complimentary role lined up alongside Travis Kelce and Noah Gray when the Chiefs run 3 tight end packages. Bearing an injury, Irv Smith will likely be nothing more than a backup. He is a receiving threat, 6'2", 240, undersized for a tight end. He is a decent blocker and is not known to be a big part of the run game. So he can play all over the field, anywhere on the line, slot, wide. He can even be, lined up as a fullback. It is an uncharacteristic move here by the Chiefs, in my opinion. They usually look for more of a blocking tight end with that number 3 spot. Could the Chiefs have a bigger plans for Irv Smith in the passing game, or is it just simply a depth piece like I suspect?
Yeah, I think it's more of a depth piece. When you sign a 1-year deal for a guy who's trying to bounce back after a year like he had, honestly, a career like he's had, injuries in Minnesota, he got opportunities to be the guy. They trade for TJ Hawkinson and basically say, well, we don't see it happening. There's talent there. Andy Reid is obviously one of the best, if not the best play caller, and I think offensive designers in the NFL. This is a strictly a move to improve the efficiency of their 13 personnel and 12 personnel sets, because when you watch the Chiefs play, when they bring out 13 personnel, yes, they have the threat to run, but they
Yep.
always want to throw the ball. They want to throw the ball out of it, and it increases the ability that they have. Even, Jody Fortson now, I don't know if you saw, but he's not going to be in Kansas City any longer. He
Okay.
signed
Yep.
with the Miami Dolphins. So that receiving threat, that guy that maybe isn't the best blocker, but adds to their 13 personnel, is no longer in Kansas City. And so Irv, who, like you said, it's not going to be a guy you line up on the end of the offensive line and say, block this defensive end one-on-one. He's going to allow them to attack the middle, attack the downfield as well. He can be a downfield threat with, he's a little bit lighter, like you said, 240 pounds ish. And that gives them more versatility in their 13 and 12 personnel packages. So at the end of the day, this does not rule out them either bringing in another tight end, drafting another tight end, and then him taking over that spot from Irv, because he's never been able to hold on to one of those positions. So right now we're looking for a receiving tight end. You're looking for a place to kind of restart your career. Let's bring you in and see what you got.
Gotcha. Okay. Thanks for that breakdown. I was a little on the end of that because it's not like them to bring in a guy that small either. So yeah, it must
Yeah.
just be depthy. So yeah, that's good to know. So Nick Allegretti, this one hurts me. Signs with the
Yeah.
Commanders, one of the many unsung heroes of the Chiefs' incredible playoff run. Allegretti stepped up in the postseason, replacing the injured Joe Thuney to start the AFC Championship game and then ultimately the Super Bowl. Pretty much the 6th offensive lineman. He always came in when needed and stepped up. Great for Allegretti, though, getting $16 million for 3 years, a deal for him more than the Chiefs probably were willing to pay for him. Allegretti played a big part on special teams as well and will be missed. I, for one, was hoping the Chiefs could re-sign him. He was great story for the Chiefs team during that playoff push and a great piece of the puzzle the Chiefs will need to replace. It was a catch-22 when you think about it. The Chiefs got a much-needed boost when Allegretti came in relief of Thuney in the playoffs. However, that performance probably got him that bigger contract. What do you think? Do you think the Chiefs' contingency plan in replacing Allegretti, what is it? Free agency, draft? That O-line is going to be a tough one to fill.
It's a tough one, man. I love Nick Allegretti so much. His
Yeah.
very first play as a Chief, he comes on as the 6th man, quote unquote, additional tight end, and gets a pancake. He just comes in and destroys a guy on his very first play, runs off the field because he's not a starter. And then, the 2020 season with the COVID year, he's a starter at left guard the entire season. He's a really good player. He comes in, he's, like I said, starts it all. He does well in the run game, in the pass protection as well, played extremely well. And then, back to being a role player, not too far removed from that when they bring in Joe Thuney the next offseason. And then just the guy that always does the dirty work, has zero questions about anything, just does what you need to get done. And he was my very first draft hit. I loved him coming out, and I did call the Chiefs drafting him on day 3. So that was one of my first claims to fame. Like, I got this guy right, and he ended up being a fantastic player. And I don't even care what it comes down to for him, because now he's going to be a starter for the Commanders. And like you said, his performance in the Super Bowl, in the playoff games leading up to it, where he again comes off the bench because Joe Thuney gets hurt, and he plays the entire Super Bowl with a torn rotator cuff. Like, he's yelling after the first series to the sideline, "Get me a brace," because he's not getting off the field. He's going to be sorely missed in Kansas City.
God.
I know I would have paid him the money, because I think 6th offensive lineman, specifically with center to guard versatility, is important, especially for this team. But I understand it. So I think
Yeah.
the plan's going to be kind of pieced together. You're going to have to find someone. I think right now it's going to be Austin Ryder, who's again started for the Chiefs at center for a few years. Actually, won their first Super Bowl in 2019. Was their starter again in 2020, and then we saw Creed Humphrey get drafted and say, "Well, Austin, you can go ahead and find someplace else to play." Then he was brought back. So I think right now that's what it looks like. We'll see what the draft brings, what other free agency brings as well, because they're going to inevitably add some offensive lineman depth as well. So it hurts me. This one hurts a lot.
Yeah,
But
I know.
congrats to Nick Allegretti. He deserves it. And I hope that's life-changing money for that guy who was a 6th, 7th round pick. So just hats off to him. And I hope wish nothing but the best for him.
Yeah, and there's not many other teams out there that have that luxury of having that 6 offensive lineman that could just go in there and play like a starter and like no questions asked. So the Chiefs are going to lose that, unfortunately, but they've had that for a couple of years and now they have to look to shift there. So, oh well, good for Allegretti though.
Yeah.
Can't be mad about that. So Deon Bush, the safety, re-signed with the Chiefs, a great depth piece that came in and out of the practice squad, played excellent when they needed him, especially in the playoffs, mostly a special teams guy, but got into the AFC Championship game and got that pick. A nice insurance policy move for the safety position with uncertainty there with Mike Edwards and Brian Cook situations. I like this move. A system guy with special teams value. A great piece here. What are your thoughts on this move?
Yeah, this just made a ton of sense. Guy who knows the defense, like I said, special teams ace, can come in when you need him to and just play solid football. Those are the exact kind of moves that got the Chiefs where they are. So I love Deon Bush. He came over from the Chicago Bears a few years ago, and he's just been a guy that if you have an injury, okay, go play a few games. He does it. You never have to worry about him being out of place. It's just he's not a starter, which is perfectly fine. I love these depth pieces that the Chiefs have. So when you have the ability to bring them back, I think that depth pieces, specifically when it comes to teams that win the Super Bowl or multiple Super Bowls at this point, when you're able to re-sign those guys, that shows you that they're like, well, I could go somewhere else. I played like Deon Bush had an interception against the Baltimore Ravens. Like he has film to say, look, I've got something to stand on. I can go maybe sign a multi-year deal somewhere else to get starter money. He's very happy to be in Kansas City and just have the opportunity to be around that team. So it's a great move, a great depth piece, because again, knowing the defense, knowing this defense that Steve Spagnuolo runs is a huge plus, because it's very complicated. It's complex. There's moving parts, all this kind of stuff. So he's a very good cog to have, especially when they continue to draft young players. Brian Cook, Jamari Connor. Deon Bush has been there the whole time. He's helped them grow as well. So I think as much as he's a really good depth player, he's a fantastic mentor to these young guys too.
Yeah, and we know we're gonna see some new faces in that linebacking core and that defensive back room, especially if Sneed goes. So they're gonna need to have some continuity there, and I love that move for that. So Mike Pennel, he re-signed with the Chiefs yesterday, played a significant role in the playoff run, logging 115 defensive snaps. Pennel on the other side of his prime at 32, but with the defensive tackles. Actually, did I see that Tershawn Wharton signed today? Is that right?
Yes, he did. He re-signed today.
Oh, that's great. So now that's another piece of the puzzle that we have to talk about as well. So that's a good fit there. So now we got a couple of those tackles under contract. It was hard for some of these guys to find the field on kissing basis, like Neil Farrell, but these guys are good. Pennel is a good depth piece. What do you think about this defensive line now? Where are the reinforcements coming from?
Yeah, I still think they're going to be drafting a defensive tackle in the first two, 3 rounds. I think that might have to happen, because again, you can't just put your eggs in the Neil Farrell or even the Isaiah Buggs basket, who played for the Lions for a few years and then was just let go this year while they're on a pace to make the NFC Championship game. So that's something that we'll kind of see how it works out. He did Buggs signed a futures contract with the Chiefs, so he'll be in Kansas City this year. But Mike Pennel, for me, this is you're 32 years old. We're going to sign you, but you don't have to do anything until like December. We don't want you to do anything. We don't want you to play. We want you to do exactly what you did this year, because I don't know if they win the Super Bowl without Mike Pennel's performance. There were so many different defensive guys you could say, I don't know if they win without this. I don't know if they win without this, because Mike Pennel was such a force in the middle of that defense for the run game. And I know that people were saying, well, they still ran the ball well. They didn't do it efficiently. It was a tough sledding running the football, specifically between the tackles for the 49ers. And Mike Pennel was a huge reason why. So I love the signing because he's done nothing but just like come through off of the practice squad for multiple years in this team and say, I'm just going to play really solid football, be a contributor. And in December, in January, and February, that's when it matters. So love this signing. And we'll just quickly touch on the Tershawn Wharton as well. It was a 1 year, $2.75 million contract, fully guaranteed. So he's just going to play this year again as that backup Chris Jones role. I think he played very well down the stretch and really started to ascend as he felt more comfortable and got healthier this season. And that was one of the huge things coming back last year is he didn't look 100%. He didn't look all the way back. I think this year found his speed to power, his strength, his core. Look, everything looked much better. His get off was back to what we saw him as a rookie. So this makes a lot of sense because, again, he knows the system. He can play a little bit on the outside if you need him to as a rusher, can still reduce inside. Obviously, he's a speed first defensive tackle. It'll be more penetration based. But at the end of the day, I think that this is a move to keep him in for 1 year. They're going to draft a young defensive tackle that will eventually replace him so they can kind of just move on from that next year. So it's a good move for this year. It's a low cost, low risk. He already knows the system. So it's both good moves at the defensive tackle spot.
All right, so now we got 5 deep dives we're going to get into before I send you on your way there, Daniel, and we'll start with the first one. All right, so arguably the biggest news in the NFL this week took place on Saturday when the biggest piece of the defensive front signed the lucrative 5-year deal. As we all know, Jones has been the cornerstone of the Chiefs defense since they drafted the former Mississippi State defensive tackle in the second round in 2016. Jones, who turns 30 in July, has 273 tackles, 75 sacks, and 37 pass deflections in 123 career games with the Chiefs. Jones has 5 straight Pro Bowls and was voted All-Pro for the second consecutive season. The Chiefs are keeping this defensive core together and are looking strong at making a push at the three-peat. So in your opinion, was the best case scenario for the Chiefs, or was this big contract also allows them some flexibility in the future? To me, it was the best case scenario. How about you?
So this is, again, you're signing a rare player. I have no problems paying Chris Jones this money. Again, it's not my money. I'm not paying him. But the team also feels the same way, or they wouldn't have given him about $95 million guaranteed. It's a 5-year. I think it came out to 158 million.2, something like that. And obviously the 2 years after, the 3 are optional. Those are both optional years for the Chiefs. And you're getting years 30, 31, and 32 from Chris Jones, which we've seen nothing but him get better. We have not seen actual drop off in Chris Jones's play. Obviously, he missed the opening game this year against the Lions.
Yep.
A large reason that they lost that football game was because Chris Jones and Travis Kelce didn't play. It kind of hurts when you have 2 all-timers not play in a football game, right? But yeah, this is a win for me. I think that the best case scenario is Chris Jones continues to do what he does, and you continue to draft young defensive backs and you put them in positions where they don't have to do everything themselves. Chris Jones creates a lot of problems for offensive lines. He creates one-on-ones for your pass rushers. And I think that we're seeing the Chiefs right now, as it stands, Mike Dana has not been signed anywhere. Yeah. So his market maybe not what he thought it was going to be. But even if he's not in Kansas City next year, you have George Karlaftis, you have Felix Enudike-Uzomah, who was your first-round pick last year. I think is going to make a big step, and he's creating one-on-ones for those guys. That's what this comes down to. He can beat double teams. I think he's doubled on 70% of his pass rush snaps, which is a ridiculous number. And he continues to find penetration and get quarterbacks off their spot. If you can do that, it becomes more important than having L'Jarius Sneed and Trent McDuffie. And I'm not saying that it's not important to not have L'Jarius Sneed. and Trent McDuffie, because those guys are fantastic. We saw that witnessed in the Super Bowl. It's great to have those guys. We just are seeing right now in today's NFL, defenses getting quarterback pressure up the middle is almost more important than from the edge, because you can, again, force those quarterbacks, instead of stepping up into the pocket, to step out to your pass rushers and throw them off the spot. If you can step up in a pocket, you can still throw the football down the field with minimal risk of changing the trajectory of your throw. But if you're forcing them to step out, now it's off platform, or it's into the rush, it's into something else. So all of those things can really make a quarterback, make an offense uncomfortable, and Chris Jones is at the forefront of that. So he's been so good for so long. This for me is a huge win, because it keeps in my opinion, it keeps the best defensive tackle in football on a team that's looking to three-peat, do something no one else has ever done. And that's the key.
Yeah, and it seems like it's a bit easier with the way the Chiefs have drafted that defensive back position the last 4 or 5 years. It's been a lot easier for them to replace a talent like that than it is to replace like a once in a 10-year decade player like Chris Jones has been, right? So yeah, absolutely monstrous move for us there. So we all know how big that move was for the club with the signing. How long do you think this keeps the Chiefs in the Super Bowl contention window for?
So, I mean, as long as you have Patrick Mahomes, I think you're in
Yeah.
the window. Like, I know Joe Burrow made the statement, as long as I'm on the field, that, I'm in Cincinnati, that my window's open. That's actually true for Patrick Mahomes, because they now have 3 Super Bowl titles in 5 years. It's insane. It's a legitimate dynasty. And again, we watched the offense, which struggled for so much of the season. In the postseason, Patrick Mahomes did everything. He ran the ball well. He made good decisions. Obviously, only one interception that was in the Super Bowl, and he was trying to make something happen when the offense wasn't doing anything. So I don't give him a ton of hurt for that one, but he made all the right decisions. And I think that when you have the Patrick Mahomes of the defense in Chris Jones, you continue to churn out the same exact solution. And when you have the defensive linebackers that the Chiefs have, and they're going to continue to bring pieces. This is not we need this player, we need that player. We have Chris Jones. The Chiefs have Chris Jones right now, and they can just kind of piece everything else together. They have good players at every single level. They hit on Trent McDuffie. That's huge.
Yeah.
Well, obviously to them, and they went up and got him. So when you have that, everything else you can kind of, I guess, facilitate through good play. They're good at linebacker. They're good in the secondary. They're good at defensive end. I wouldn't say they're great at any one of those positions unless they keep L'Jarius Sneed with Trent McDuffie. Then they're great at cornerback, and they're good at safety. So when you can be elite in one spot that objectively changes the dynamic of an offense you're playing, it creates more problems because of what you can do on the back end with the way Steve Spagnuolo changes things and the way that they coach and the way they draft and all on and on and on. So keeping him on the defense just continues to make what they do profitable and keeps that path going, and what Steve Spagnuolo has been so great at doing.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, you hit that on the head again. I love your perspectives. All right, number 2. So this is a situation that we kind of want to uncover here, because this is like the next real big domino that needs to fall before we get any sort of clarity as far as what they're going to do with the wide receiver position. I'm hearing a lot of rumblings that if Sneed gets traded, they're going to bring in Marquise Brown right away. It's almost a done deal. But that's just rumors, right? So what are your thoughts? Like, what's going to happen here with Sneed? Like, I know you said you think he's going to get traded, which surprised me. I thought they were going to try and retain him here, but a trade, I know there's a lot of suitors out there for him. What's the asking price, you think?
Like I said, I don't know if you can realistically accept anything less than a top, I would say 50, 55 pick. Yes. If the best you're getting is less than that, then no, then you don't trade L'Jarius Sneed. You either have him play on the tag, or you work to sign him to a long-term extension. The problem then becomes cap hits. You have big cap hits with Patrick Mahomes. You have big cap hits with Chris Jones. Can you afford long-term to pay L'Jarius Sneed $20+ million a year to continue to play. And as again, we're talking about a guy who, in a position specifically that's extremely volatile.
Mm-hmm.
And L'Jarius Sneed played his best year of his career. You have to ask, is that going to be the best year L'Jarius Sneed plays? Specifically because you have his one contract, his rookie contract, and that's all we have. Chris Jones got his second contract and continued to get better. So you say, okay, Chris, you've earned all this money. And when you have 1 year, I like L'Jarius Sneed. He was excellent in the slot his rookie season, and actually his first 2 seasons. And then last year when he asked 2 years ago, when he was like, I want to play on the outside, Spags. I want to go on the outside. I want the number ones. We started to see him do that more.
Mm-hmm.
That's when he came into his own. And now the knee injury is what's holding this up, in my opinion. He's had a couple of knee problems that he's played through, not had, surgery. So it hasn't been something that has made him miss football. But when those things add up and teams are like, I don't know, are you going to miss games for us if we sign you to a big contract? Everyone wants guaranteed money. Everyone does. And if you want guaranteed money, I mean, we need some clarity on your knee. And obviously with free agency not being something he can actually go do, he can't go to other teams' facilities and get checked out medically. Those things don't happen. So there's a lot of hold up on that end. And I think that's where the hesitation comes from. But I think that the best scenario for everybody would be to get a second round pick for L'Jarius Sneed. You keep cap space, you keep flexibility, and then you draft a young cornerback either in the first round or the second round, because you've shown that you can draft, develop, specifically because they've figured out the kind of player they want at cornerback. Trent is a little bit different. He's not Sneed. He's not Watson. He's not Williams. He doesn't fit that 6 foot above, long arm, physical guy. He's 6 foot, shorter arms, but mentally he was the smartest cornerback in that class, and he's already one of the best corners in the NFL. So they were like, we love this guy. We're going to go get him. He's different than what we currently have, but we know what we want to do with him. So they've kind of figured out cornerback specifically what they want in a body type, physicality sense, in a long arm range. So they've identified that. So again, I love L'Jarius Sneed. I would love him to stay in Kansas City, but we also have to remember that in times like this, when you're trying to continue a dynasty and create more, go for a 3-peat. Yeah, it would be great to have him for a year. Don't know what's going to happen there, but I would love to be able to get a second round pick back for him instead of he plays on the tag and you get a third round compensatory pick. You know what I mean? I want him to win a third Super Bowl straight with the team, but I think longevity wise, it makes more sense to try to get a second. And if you can't, okay, fine. You stay in Kansas City, we go with 3-peat, and we figure it out after.
Yeah, and I think too that he's not young coming on to his second contract. He's 27 as well. And some of these bigger contracts are going to younger guys like the 25, 26-year-old coming off that in that range too. So that's probably playing in a lot of teams' situations as well. You're looking at $19 million for a 27-year-old with potentially knee injury history that you can't get the history on either. So I could see that. Yeah, for sure. All right. So we have couple more here. Let's get into the lineup. So there's, we talked about that a little bit already in the Gay and the Tranquill deals here, but you think the Chiefs expected Willie Gay to go for that cheap? And if so, do you think they would have made a push for him knowing that it was only $5 million?
I think that Willie Gay probably told the organization, I'm getting this offer. I'm getting this offer because I think you want to stay in Kansas City. I feel like you don't necessarily, and I'm not trying to dog the Saints, but they have not won football games and getting to the postseason and won Super Bowls. And a 1 year, $5 million isn't exactly, breaking the bank for Willie. I know it's more money than he's probably earned a year since he got drafted, but I would imagine that the Chiefs were involved in his contract in terms of the agent told them what he was going to be offered and they said go ahead and go sign. That's what I think happened. But
Yeah.
obviously I have no sources, I have no information on that, but that does seem to be what went on in that situation. And it's unfortunate for the Chiefs, just specifically because I mean, maybe it's not unfortunate, but it's a 1 year, $5 million contract. Like it's not a huge thing. I don't even think that 5 million was guaranteed unless I'm wrong in that. But at the end of the day, it's turnover. It's no
Yeah.
team is the same. And Willie, for everything that he did, I think that it was time for them to move on and find a cheaper, younger option, which is unfortunately part of the business. And the Chiefs in-house, like we talked about earlier, probably feel like they have an answer to that already.
Yeah. All right. So I think the Chiefs made the right decision keeping Tranquill over Gay for similar money.
Yes.
Gay is younger, but Tranquill is more versatile, a better leader in the locker room, and was great at filling in for Nick Bolton last year. What do you think? You're on the same page with me? Do you think the Tranquill signing was more important than bringing Gay back?
It was specifically because of what like you said, his versatility. He can play every single linebacker position, and he can also play and line everybody up. When you're able to take over for Nick Bolton, you're taking over as the green dot, the guy who calls all the plays on defense, who lines everybody up. That's not something Willie can do. So you're bringing in a guy that will still play next to Nick Bolton, but also can take over if he needs to. And you have that versatility and a guy who loves this team, and you're just continuing to churn out guys that can continue to build the younger team, the younger linebackers as well. So yeah, it made much more sense to bring in Tranquill and keep him over Willie Gay, even though Willie's been fantastic for the Chiefs.
Yeah. So they were pretty thin at that position last year. Opposing teams were, attacking them weekly. If there was a weakness in the defenses, was in the middle of the field. So do you think the Chiefs are looking at bringing in another linebacker, or do you think they have enough depth in-house at the position?
They'll probably bring somebody else in, but I think the four guys that they
Nice.
have in terms of Leo Chenal, excuse me, Jones, Cameron Jones, Bolton, and Tranquill are going to play unless someone gets hurt. Obviously, knock on wood in that scenario, but that they don't have a ton of playable depth. I think they might bring back Jack Cochran, who played last year when not only Willie but Nick Bolton got hurt. No, so that was when Nick Bolton and Drue Tranquill got hurt. So you had Jack Cochran on the field. So that was a unique situation for the Chiefs. They didn't have a ton of playing experience. And I think that even if he does come back, he is one of those guys that's a special teams ace that would make sense. He's going to be a low cost contract player, but I don't think they're going to draft one. This isn't a great draft for linebackers. It would make more sense. But specifically what we're seeing around the league is these linebackers get drafted in the first and second round, and then by the time they're coming around to their second contract is when they start figuring it out. It would make a lot more sense to take someone who maybe is coming off their first contract that is still learning a little bit, but had some upside in the draft 3 or 4 years ago, and you bring them in to develop them in your system with the guys and the smart people that they have. So I would imagine they bring in someone else just to give them playable depth behind Nick and Drue, because if you have those two guys that get hurt, there's nobody else that can come in and really call the defense.
Gotcha. All right. Okay, so we got some wide receivers I kind of want to dig into, and I want to get your opinion on the room there. So let's get into that. So we got a lot of movement potentially that are going to, hit the wide receiver room for the Chiefs. We know that, Rashee Rice will be there next year. Justin Watson still under contract. Sky Moore, hoping that we don't have to result to have him in the lineup too much next year. But what do you think is going to happen there? We know MVS got his papers released. Do you think he sees an opportunity elsewhere? Or do you think the Chiefs might even decide to bring him back on the cheap if he doesn't see any offers elsewhere?
I don't think that there's a chance he comes back. I know that he had a good couple of postseasons, but no, there's nothing there for you, and they know now there's nothing there for him, and that's just what it is. It's fine. Congratulations, MVS, for 2 Super Bowls. You helped them do it, but at the end of the day, no, I'm personally done. I think the Chiefs are done, and they're ready to move on. So again, just hats off to what he was able to accomplish. But no, he's probably not going to be in Kansas City. I've heard that he might be going elsewhere, just little things here and there, but it would not shock me if he was someone that stays around the wide receiver free agency until closer to maybe even after draft time.
Yeah. Okay. Then you got to like Kadarius Toney, who looks like a cut candidate for sure. He had that, incidents in the locker room about, his injuries and stuff like that. Kind of a cancer all around. What are your thoughts on that? You think he's going to be gone?
I would cut Kadarius personally because, again, it's addition by subtraction to me,
Mhm.
but they don't gain anything from cutting him outside of maybe morality and locker room gain. But by all accounts, Andy Reid has done nothing but kind of rave about the person that he is. Travis Kelce has, Patrick Mahomes has. So if there's nothing to gain by cutting him monetarily, it feels like he's going to be around next year anyway, which again, I wouldn't do it, but I understand if you can maybe salvage something out of a guy who is very good with the ball in his hands. It would seem Andy Reid would like one more crack at that. And it feels like that's what's going to happen.
Okay, good to know. All right, then, Mecole Hardman, he signed with the Jets last year, ended up back with us. We know he'll hit the open market again. He hit the headlines last year by, denying those allegations of leaking game plans. Seems like a cancer, but it might be wise for the Chiefs to at least entertain the idea of bringing him back for another season. His skill set does fit the offense and the receiver room. I don't know. This is a weird situation to look back on. He won the Super Bowl winning touchdown catch, so that's fresh on our minds. What do you think about his situation? Is there a chance that he comes back?
There's going to be a chance. This will be more of a towards training camp stuff. If he's still on the market and
Yep.
they don't have a speed player that they can help take the top off, I wouldn't shock me at all that he would be back in Kansas City for another year just to help. Because again, that three-peat stuff, he's probably going to be favoring like staying with Kansas City or maybe just waiting around until they figure out what they want to do. But he's the one guy I think that it wouldn't shock me if he was back next year just for that speed element.
Yeah, agreed. And then there's, Richie James, who the Chiefs brought in this offseason, more of a sure-handed wide receiver. Couldn't really get onto the field much. He only played 10 games, and when he did get on the field, didn't see much action there. I doubt he comes back, but, what do you think? What are our options here with him?
It just really depends on what they bring in because he was a good special teams player, good
Mhm.
punt returner. If they don't really address the position, then there's always the chance he comes back. I just feel like that they're going to, and I like Richie, but we're trying to, at least from what I understand, it looks like the Chiefs are really trying to make over that wide receiver room, take out some guys that were just plugins and trying to fill in and maybe draft more depth and get more development there. And Richie, for everything that he did as a part of the 49ers, the Giants, and now the Chiefs, there's not enough there to say, okay, we'll bring you back because you were able to contribute. I would personally like to see them try to get even younger, bring in more guys throughout the draft, and just try to develop them a little bit more.
Yeah, I think that's where it's headed right now. The draft is where it's at. There's a lot of talent in that draft. And with the Calvin Ridley news yesterday, do you think the Chiefs are now been priced out of, say, like Marquise Brown or Curtis Samuel now? That contract was ridiculous for a team that doesn't really have a starting quarterback. I mean, they're resetting the market here on a 29 years old wide receiver that hasn't really proved himself to me to be worth that much. But that kind of sucks for us now because that's resetting some of this market here. And I thought that maybe they would have had a shot at Marquise Brown. I'm not sure if we really needed him with the draft coming up, but what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that Ridley deal really squashes the opportunity of the Chiefs hitting the open market for a wide receiver?
I don't think so. And when we're looking at guys like Marquise Brown and Mike Williams specifically, those are guys that are going to be up for prove it deals. Both of them coming off
Yeah.
of injury plagued seasons, the last two seasons, not just one, but
Mhm.
two seasons in a row. And Mike Williams has been injured most of his career. The same with Hollywood Brown. Like these guys are need. I mean, Brown specifically, he's going to be 27 years old next year when he's on the free agent market again. If he signs a 1 year
Yeah.
contract, he's 26 right now. I think that the best source of income for Marquise would be like, let's go win a Super Bowl, get a 1 year contract, a prove it deal with the, Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, and turn that into a contract because that's exactly what Juju Smith Schuster did. And then he got hurt. the next year. Like, he
Yeah.
did turn it into money. So if you want to get that contract, you're not getting it this offseason. You're going to get it next offseason, but you're going to need to take a prove it deal with a good team and possibly go win a Super Bowl in the process, which I think would be very attractive to a guy like Marquise Brown and Mike Williams, considering he was in the division and watched the Chiefs do it for 3 times. He's seen it happen. So that seems to be what I think happens for those guys. But there's other players. I don't think it rose the market for anybody else. I think the opinion of Calvin Ridley around the league is that he's still a true number one, which we'll find out.
Yeah, for sure. It was an interesting deal for sure, and it's a prove it deal too, and we'll see what happens with that. So I think for the Chiefs here, like you said, these prove it deals might be it. They might be incentive driven too. You know, you can get them on the cheap on a quick, an easy base salary and just load it with incentives. So yeah, I agree with that. Okay, so I want your opinion one last time here on just your opinion on the draft and where you see at least the first round headed, and maybe what your thoughts on the Chiefs game plan for the later rounds. As you can see by that intro video, you might see where I think the Chiefs are heading, or I hope the Chiefs are heading with their 32 pick. I'm thinking they go wide receiver, but if a couple of these defensive ends or offensive linemen can slip to them, which I don't know if they're going to be at that stage. I think there's a lot of depth at that wide receiver position. I think that's where the sweet spot will be. But I want your opinion on it. What do you think is going to happen in the draft in that first round for the Chiefs?
Yeah, if you would have asked me like a month or two ago, I think it would have been wide receiver. Like, I would have been very, very adamant it'd be wide receiver. But we know that teams probably aren't going to be very likely to trade with the Kansas City Chiefs for them to go up and get somebody. So I'm starting to lean more just kind of best player available, because I think that they're going to stay at 32 or maybe trade down. Maybe they get a few spots up, but again, it's hard to see teams willing to trade with Kansas City. If it's a few spots, maybe they don't really care so much because their player they want is still going to be there. But that'll come in due time. And right now, I think that wide receiver still makes a lot of sense. They still have a need. And this is all predicated on what they think that Rashee Rice is going to be. I know that there's a lot of opinions that he will be the number one receiver that can go win vertically on the outside against man coverage. Film last year suggested otherwise. It did not suggest that he's ready to take that next step. This offseason will be kind of crucial in improving as a guy that can win against man coverage and maybe be more of a vertical threat, play an XZ type of role where he's the focal point of the entire route tree. So we're going to see how that develops. But that, again, plays into what they want to do at wide receiver. There's going to be some players at the end of the first round that can fit an X role. 2 guys specifically, and Keon Coleman, who apparently is going to be falling down maybe into the second round, will be someone at 32. If you want Rashee to be that Z guy that just continues to move around, be a yards after catch guy, I can think Keon Coleman or Xavier Legette out of South Carolina are both options as your quote unquote X that can win against man coverage, or at least be big bodies to do that. Xavier Legette had the most yards earned last year against man coverage in all of college football. So that's just an interesting thing that the Chiefs might be, looking at. They were also at Xavier Legette's pro day this past week. So all things considered, wide receiver is still very much on the board. Ladd McConkey is another fun option as well. He would be, again, that's if you see Rashee Rice maybe taking more of a X role. Ladd is going to be Z. He can play all of it. He can do all of it, but he's not going to be a deep threat in the NFL, in my opinion. I know that he ran fast. I don't think his game speed is exactly what that is, but that's neither here nor there. So there's a lot of different options they have there, but I'm starting to lean more towards offensive line, like offensive line, left tackle specifically, because we don't know what's going to happen with Wanya Morris. He was a 3rd-round pick. Maybe he doesn't actually develop. And he was objectively a bad pass protector. He just wasn't very good at it. He was good in the run game where he was able to get on some blocks, drive guys through, and help the run game. But he was not essentially he was almost a coin flip with Donovan Smith, and we know Donovan Smith was not a very good
Yep.
pass protector until maybe he got back from his injury and he played much better. So it's starting to look like offensive or left tackle is going to be something that comes up on their side. And if they trade L'Jarius Sneed, cornerback starts to creep up a little bit. It's a deep
Yes,
cornerback class too.
it
It's a
is.
very talented class. And with how offensively gifted this class is, it could push a guy that they really like, a cornerback that they like, down to 32, where you might be like, okay, on day 2 we can still get a receiver, we can still get a good tackle. We're looking pretty good here. We'll just take this corner. So I think those 3 positions right now are where I'm
Okay.
feeling the Chiefs go at the end of the first round.
Depending on who's there, they're just going to take the
Yeah.
best player in that situation, whichever they get the highest grade on, and that makes sense. So, in these later rounds, what's your ideal situation? Like, what do the Chiefs want to fill in these later rounds? They have a decent amount of draft capital there, and there are some needs, obviously. So, what's your ideal situation for them?
On day 2 specifically, I would love a defensive tackle. Like I said this earlier in
Mhm.
the class, earlier in the show, I think that defensive tackle, someone that can do both in terms of rush the passer and still give you rush defense floor, would be great. There's a guy, Dwayne Carter, out of Duke, that I'm very, very high on, that I would love to see in Kansas City next to Chris Jones for years to come. That'd be a lot of fun for me specifically. Also for the Chiefs defense, and then really we talked, those 3 positions, anywhere from wide receiver, offensive line, defensive tackle, depending on what happens with L'Jarius Sneed. You can kind of swap corner in with whichever one. I think you have to have a wide receiver on days 1 or 2. I don't think you can leave this draft without one,
Yeah.
specifically because of how good it is at the top. So I think that has to be there. Charles Menahue is hurt.
Yes.
He's probably not going to play until November, December timeframe. Mike Dana, again, free agent. I like FAU. I like George Karlaftis. I don't think either of those guys are ones. I mean, Karlaftis played very well.
Mhm.
My opinion, a number 2, a very good number 2, which is fine because Omenihu is going to be that guy eventually, but he's hurt. So maybe defensive
Yeah.
end becomes more of a selling point on day 3. But again, continue to just draft corners. Just continue to throw bodies at cornerback, because even if you do keep L'Jarius Sneed this year on the tag, next year after, you'll still need someone to come take that spot, whether it's going to be Watson, Williams, maybe Najee Johnson. We don't know. He's coming off an injury, so that's a possibility as well. But I think that the Chiefs need to come out of this draft with 2 wide receivers, one on day 1 and 2, one on day 3. I think they absolutely have to, just to continue pumping into that. And obviously now without multiple wide receivers that you're not
Yeah.
going to have on this roster, you have to continue to put talent in there. And then the last thing they need now is depth offensive line with Nick Allegretti gone. So I think you'll see them take someone probably in the 5th round, 4th round ish. They got 2 5th round picks. So that's probably where they attack a depth offensive line player. So lots of things that they still need to fill out this roster. Lots of free agents. We're still got some time here in free agency. Second wave has not happened yet. So just kind of hold tight, let it happen, and don't get too frustrated that they're not making a lot of free agency moves, because they're very deliberate with their process so far.
And they've done everything they've done already. Like their
Yeah.
their blueprint is almost intact right now. We're just setting up the last little dominoes to fall so that the three-peat can happen. So, man, thank you so much for coming on the show. You've been an awesome mind. Like you opened my mind up to a couple of situations there that I never thought of. So really appreciate that. I'll be back next week with the full free agency recap show, and then we'll start digging into some player spotlights as well. So that's it for episode 5 of the Chiefs Uncovered. I appreciate you all for tuning in. You'll be able to find this show on the Undroppables network moving forward. The plan is to continue content throughout the offseason and ramp it up once the season starts. The Undroppables are looking for anchors to drop NFL team specific content. Follow us on socials and find out how you can become part of this elite team. Our turf, your content, their game. Let's go. So, Daniel, thank you so much for coming on to our show. You've been an incredible guest. You're invited back whenever. So please remind everybody where they can find you and all your awesome content.
I appreciate you having me. It was a great time, and I'll definitely be back on before the season gets going. I can promise you
Yeah.
that. You guys can follow me on Twitter at InHarmsWay19. I have a draft podcast for Cover One, which can be found on the Cover One YouTube page. It's under the college football section. That all those drop there. all of my Chiefs-centric film breakdowns, live streams, everything that we do at rgrfootball.com, and all of my draft content film grade wise is going to be on NFL33.com. And then everything that I do fantasy wise will be at footballguys.com.
Yes, of course. Follow Daniel. He's awesome. All right, folks. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Remember to subscribe to the channel and also follow me on X at FFCanuck99. That's it for today. I'll be back next time with the Chiefs free agency recap show. So tune in for that. From everyone here at the Undroppables Network, I'm Grindberg. Thanks for tuning in.